Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. The kilt. What do you think of when you see a man wearing a kilt? Do you smile, maybe shake your head, and wonder why a man would wear a piece of clothing that looks like a woman's skirt? Now, I have wondered, and because of my Scottish ancestry, I wanted to know if there was any importance and significance behind the kilt. So I did some research on the internet. I found a couple of websites, the Encyclopedia of Clothing and Fashion, and Wikipedia. They had some articles on the history of the kilt. According to Wikipedia, the kilt has come to signify natural and unmistakable masculinity. Now in Scotland today, they wear the kilt for a uniform, formal wear, evening wear, and even casual wear. But first, let's go back to the 16th century. This is when the first forms of the kilt emerged. It was called the great kilt or the belted plaid. Now the Scottish wore the same form of dress as the Irish. It was a woolen cloak called the plaid. It was either plain design or tartan designs. Now the tartan design is what they call the plaid in North America. Now because of the overabundance of wool at this time, the woolen cloak grew. They started building it at their waist, hence the belted plaid. Now some of these were overabundance in size. They actually were 5 feet tall and 21 feet long, if you can imagine getting into all that material. Now according to the encyclopedia, only the Highlanders wore this form of dress. The Lowlanders and others considered them the bare-legged barbarians. Now, according to the encyclopedia, they would gather the pleats at their waist, pass it around their body, and then belt it on. Now this left the lower half for the kilt, and now the upper half there was abundance of material, so they could do numerous of things. They could put it over their shoulder, leave it gathered at their waist, hanging down, or in bad weather they can even put it over their heads for cover, or with the abundance of material they could even use it as a camping blanket. According to the encyclopedia, there was some debate about how they arranged it on their body. Now, John Dunbar, in his book called The Highland Costume, said they would lay it out on the ground, arrange it and gather it, then lay on that, then build it to them. But other dress historians say that the most time-effective way was for them to just arrange it standing up. Now, there was actually a movie that made fun of how they do it. I wish I could remember the name of it. They just had them lay it out on the ground. The guy would start at one end, gather it to him, and just roll into the next end. Let's fast forward to the 17th to the 18th century. According to Wikipedia, this is when the great kilt was downsized to what they call a small kilt or the walking kilt, which was basically just the lower half of the great kilt. Now there's an English Quaker named Thomas Rawlinson who was first credited for the design of the small kilt. He had some Highlanders working for him in a charcoal producing facility in Glengarry, and due to the impracticality of this kilt, he took it to a tailor to have him fix it, and so the tailor just cut it in half. Now the story says that he liked it so much he started wearing it, and then the Clan MacDonald of Glengarry liked it so much that they started wearing it. But most historians disagree to this because there was a historian named Hugh Trevor Roper who found some illustrations dated before Rawlinson was even in Scotland of men wearing the kilt. So they say that the most likely way was the natural evolution of it because of their looms. Now the old loom that they used was heavy and warped from the weight of it, so that the new looms were more narrow, and so it just naturally downsized. Now according to Wikipedia, not everyone was fond of the kilt. In the 18th century, there were a lot of wars and rebellions aimed at dethroning the English. They wanted to put on a Scottish king. So King George II of Great Britain in 1746 imposed the Dress Act, banning any form of Highland dress, including the kilt, so that anyone found wearing the kilt was imprisoned for 6 months for the first offense, and for the second offense, sentenced for 7 years. There was an exception to the ban. The Highland regiments in the army, in the English army, were allowed to wear their kilts. They had to wear the red coat like everyone else, but it was cut off at the waist, so it was allowed for the folds of the skirt of the kilt. There was also some Scottish Highlanders who wore the kilt fashionably in protest of the ban, but they weren't looked at barbarically anymore. They were now looked at with romantic nostalgia because they were clinging to their past. They were clinging to their old ways. According to the encyclopedia, 35 years later in 1782, the ban was lifted, and if it wasn't for the army, most likely the Highland dress would not have survived. And according to the Encyclopedia of Clothing and Fashion, in 1822, King George IV of England journeyed to Edinburgh, Scotland, and he did this in full Highland dress. According to the encyclopedia, he promoted the kilt as fashionable wear among the Scottish nobility, but it looked nothing like the Highland dress of a century before. It was now very dramatic and spectacular. He was the king, so befitting for a king. Now, Queen Victoria was King George IV's successor. She was from Germany, but she favored the Highland kilt. She even dressed her boys in it, and this was also the Victorian era, so promoting this, really widened the appeal of the kilt. And now it was part of the Scottish national identity. Now, you recall that the kilt evolved from the great kilt, was cut down to size for the small kilt, was banned for 35 years by the English nobility, and then brought back into popularity by the English nobility. Now you'll see movies like Braveheart. If you've seen Braveheart and Rob Roy, they portray their heroes to be very masculine and brave in their kilts. And then even today in Scotland, they fashion them with leather and denim, and they're more of a masculine cut. I know when I see someone wearing a kilt today, I will not be amused anymore. I will remember all that the kilt did to survive through the centuries, and how these Scottish now choose to wear their kilts proudly as part of their Scottish national identity. Now I would answer anyone's questions if anyone's got any.
I don't.
No questions?
No.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you.